Today is May 29th, 2025, and I'm connecting back with a friend and former student named Eden, who is more than meets the eye. Now, he's not a transformer, but he is one of a kind. I'm T. Glenn of T-Bone Jones Media, and this is Conversations with T.
What's up?
What's up, buddy?
What's up, man?
Not much. Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Lovely room. Love the Clemson thing.
Appreciate it.
Love the Clemson stuff. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Sorry, University of SC.
That's right. Now, for those of you who don't know Eden, he is a strong, highly educated advocate for people with disabilities in a variety of ways. He himself is neurodivergent and works tirelessly at the craft of voice acting skills.
Yes, very much so.
Tell me something about what does that look like?
What does it look like? Well, I can tell you recently not in a podcast, I was auditioning for like an audio drama project, and something involved basically voicing creatures that are not human, as in no English, no nothing. And one of those basically was imagine like a crocodile mixed with a basilisk, with a lot of guttural sounds.
Can you give us any idea of what that's like?
Without destroying my throat.
Okay,
Like that.
Perfect. That was it, and you can tell that you put some work into that.
Yeah, deep breathing exercises really help, and also plenty of water and good sleep, and also don't eat too much fried food. It's not good for the throat.
Fried food's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not good for you for the throat, and that's usually a recommendation not to do that.
Good. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's caught on film forever.
Yeah, I know, right? They're gonna be like, "What the heck is that sound?" I'm like, "It's my throat, man."
It's a crocodile basilisk.
Yeah, it's just a basilisk.
Look, why don't we start with talking about being neurodivergent?
Mm-hmm.
Please define that term, and how did you know you were neurodivergent, and when did you realize what it meant? So what is it?
What is it? Well, I think it's important to understand the foundations of neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is both a paradigm and a political social movement that advocates for the idea, and one that I believe is just true, is that there is no such thing as a normal mind. All minds are different, and where people say like autism, ADHD, or whichever comes first, they're all just part of the natural diversity of our world. Same for like religion, ethnicity, gender, vice versa. It reframes disabilities from a weakness point of view to more like something to be cherished, loved, and to celebrate.
Okay, so neurodiversity is just a point on the continuum, and many things could fall into that category.
Right. It doesn't have to be like autism or ADHD, because neuro doesn't just mean like the brain, it includes the nerves. So it could be like, say, on how you perceive the world or how people perceive you. Like some people may think that you're disabled even though you don't feel like you're not. Because the trick is that neurodiversity, the definition I just gave you, that technically includes everyone. In a post-neurodiversity world, we wouldn't need labels such as autism or ADHD. We will all acknowledge we have different brains, and we try to accommodate each other to the best of our ability. But we don't live in that world.
Yeah, we don't really live in that sort of utopian view. But the idea is that with sort of a common sense respect approach to all humanity, you're also honoring neurodiversity as being just part of the rainbow of diversity of the world.
Yeah, and like I said, you can either acquire and I'm not gonna get too long into this. You can acquire being neurodivergent, and I'll explain in a bit, or be born with it. Acquired could be something like, say, you take like a lot of psychological drugs,
Psychedelic drugs.
and it just pretty much change or how you function.
It alters your sort of chemistry.
Yeah, basically, because like I said, neurodiversity doesn't include like the brain, like neurodevelopmental disabilities like autism or ADHD. It includes like the body as well. So someone who take like a lot of psychiatric drugs, they can fall under that neurodivergent label, and this is where the definition come in. The reason why we even have neurotypical and neurodivergent, even though you may wonder like, well, if neurodiversity is true, then why we even have these labels, right? Like why separate people in these values? It's because neurodiversity is also a political movement, because it wants to emphasize that neurotypicals, basically those who are perceived as not being, for lack of a better term, disabled, as people who it's kind of hard to really. I think a funny way to put it, neurotypical is basically the average Joe,
Okay.
like the one who doesn't seem like disabled or acts in a way that's divergent from how society view as normal.
So if it was a crayon color, it would be normal.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, like they're like the vanilla,
Yeah.
very vanilla.
Gotcha.
Neurodivergent is the opposite. These are people, autistic, for example, autistic people are ones who divert to what society view as normal. So coming back to the whole ADHD, psychedelic drugs, and also you could be neurodivergent, even if you're not, by being perceived as such. Like I'm sure people told you many times, maybe more of a joking matter. People seem like, oh, you're crazy, or like that's freaking stupid. Why are you acting like this?
Right.
Because you could be perceived as being disabled, even though you don't view yourself as disabled. Because people call each other crazy just to devalue their opinions, or just, for lack of a better term, not take them seriously.
Right. So how did you learn you were neurodivergent?
How I learned about it, a little complicated. It's basically I found out I was neurodivergent through, it wasn't even intentional actually. I was going to Coastal Carolina for my bachelor's, and I always used something, and I never really looked into it at the time before I did, called a 504 plan.
Okay, so your parents had gotten you a 504 plan?
Yeah.
Or you had?
I had 504 plan.
But I mean, who initiated that?
It was mostly my special education teacher and my parents, though they never told me about what that really meant.
Okay.
Because I was always in like the special education classes, but I wasn't told why or what disability I had.
Mm.
It was always like kind of like a not like a Voldemort, where it's like he who shall not be named type of thing. It wasn't like that. It was more like just under the table.
So you had a 504 plan. Then how did that lead to you
I
understanding?
basically opened the packet for the first time in my life, and I looked into it and it mentioned something about Asperger, and it was talking about my IQ scores or whatever, and I was very confused about what is this, because it was the first time where I said, you know what, I'm curious, let me open this packet, and I
Yeah.
found all this information.
And so what did it mean to you to learn that?
I thought at first it meant that I was like broken, or it meant that I was, I guess, lied to unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like almost like it was almost like the answer was there all along, but someone put like a little mask over it. Like put like a little something over my eyes.
So you couldn't quite see it clearly. Once you did though, and it sunk in, what kind of effect did that have on you?
Once it sunk in, I honestly, weirdly enough, it increased my self-esteem a lot, because it made me realize like all the weird stuff I've done in the past, or to put it more elegantly, eccentric behaviors, was not so much just me being weird. It was just me being me.
Okay, so I'm sure everyone and every family will handle discovery differently. The
Yeah,
diagnosis, whether or not they tell the child, when they tell the child, those are all sort of family specific decisions that get made. Hard to judge them
yeah.
because it has to do with a family. But what advice would you give someone about communicating a diagnosis to a child?
This is a very good question. And the question more I'm going to respond with a reframing of perspective.
Okay.
Basically, a lot of times, and I kind of hint this when I was talking about neurodiversity, society has a view about disabled people in general. Neurodiversity is a response to that, where a lot of times doctors and the medical community, and it trickles down to how we view disability in media and whatnot, view disability as something bad, something to be afraid of, or something to keep quiet about in family units.
Okay.
And that has an effect in a lot of families, because a lot of families, when they hear like their child is autistic, or they hear like they're disabled, they there's some stories they hear where they go like, "Oh my God, autism took away my child," or like, "Oh my gosh, my life will no longer be the same," or because of him, or whatever.
And it's strange that they are thinking more of themselves than their child, but
Correct.
still, go ahead.
Correct. That's what I'm getting at. It's more, for lack of a better term, it's a selfish point of view, not just because they're selfish on itself, because they have this warped perception of what disability is. And I think the advice I would give in this case, when thinking about your child being disabled, is reframe disability from something negative to something neutral, something that just is. Because, I mean, for example, a lot of people love being autistic. Some people view, like, say, their PTSD is something they want to separate from their core identity. So disability could be something bad, could be something neutral, could be something to be celebrated. But the best way to start off is to start from acknowledging disability. It just is. And your child, regardless of what you expect your child, was never going to be you. Every child that is born from their mother or their parents or whichever are, in a sense, and it's something that I borrow from in the early 90s, when early autistic advocates, I forgot the name of that person, but he wrote like a poem or like a little short story about how telling the parents that we are aliens, in a sense that not so much that we're literally aliens, not like the attack on Mars, like, like a type of thing,
Yeah.
but more like you can't expect us to be like you. We're different from you. We have different viewpoints. Sure, we share the similar genes, but overall, we're completely new people. We're not you. We're not your husband. We're
Yeah.
just are.
And that's true, like, for all of humanity.
Yeah.
I have 2 children, and I, for some reason, fooled myself into thinking that the lessons I learned would help them be better people, but really their own journey has to be experienced by themselves.
Right.
They're separate from me. They're of me, but they're separate from me.
Right.
Tough lesson to learn.
It is. And that's a lot of parents need to realize. That's something that a lot of parents really need to learn, is that disability is really something that is both a core identity for a lot of people, but also something to really think about. Because a lot of times when parents think about the disabled kids, they think more like they can't do this. They say like their kids shouldn't do this, or they kind of like, for lack of a better term, they kind of put them in like a little shell and never let them to really explore outside of it. And the problem is that when you do that, the kid as he grows up will internalize ableism. Like if he's told like he can't do this, well, what do you think is gonna happen as he grow up? He's just gonna assume that, oh, I can't do this, or like people don't expect much from me, or like I knew I was gonna fail the test because that's how I am.
Right.
Because people told me I can't do it.
So getting back to the question, the advice you would give is maybe, and I'm putting words in your mouth, is to encourage parents to see it as a neutral, it just is thing, and then try and seize the moment and not limit this situation.
Yeah, the best way I would put it is something that I follow in my philosophy is the independent living philosophy, where it emphasizes that consumers, in this case people with disabilities, are best experts on their own needs and should be allowed to integrate into community. So the way I like to put it for parents to simplify it, basically, don't be what could be like a good profession as a metaphor. Don't be like, say, the police officer. Don't try to control them, or the jailer. Be their cheerleader. Like if they feel like they're feeling down, or like they feel like no one supports them, be there to comfort them. Don't basically tell them like, oh, I think you should be a janitor because that's the best thing for you.
Right.
Instead, let them make the decision, and if they fail, well, you're the trampoline that can help bounce them up.
That's a nice metaphor. What would you say, what kind of things have helped you along the way? Maybe at Clemson or at Coastal Carolina, here at the beach. What kinds of things helped you along the way?
In terms of
allowing you to be your best.
Well, allow me to be my best, is more on, I think the thing will allow me to do my best is honestly meeting other autistic people, like people like me. Not 100% like me.
Because there are no two people just alike.
Yeah, exactly. And because the thing is, meeting with all autistic people, they just get like, my parents don't view me in this way. I completely get it. Or like, hey, my parents, I have this sensory issue as well, so I totally get. It's something where it helps, and I'm not sure if other people who are autistic like me are listening to this. Find your community. Find people like you who can, because part of being autistic is not just a medical or social identity, it's also a political identity, which means a lot of autistic people out there can also share the same struggles as you are. So really find your community, talk about it. And it could be something simple as, say, like, I don't know, like going to like a Dungeons and Dragons club. It could be like playing Magic the Gathering with other people. It could be something like, say, like a chess club or something like that. And by the way, you're more likely to find at least one autistic person in one of those hobbies. I guarantee you. Like in any nerd type of place, you're gonna find one autistic person.
A nerd type of place.
Yeah, any nerd place. I'm telling you, most of the nerds I met so far are autistic or ADHD. It's either one of those. Like I promise you that you'll find your community once you actually step out of your comfort zone and find them. Because a lot of times, friends are not gonna come to you. You mostly have to come to them. So that may involve like either making your own club, going to a club, or maybe just could be something as simple as, say, talking to someone in forums or in Discord or something like that.
Okay.
You just have to really find your community, because I have a friend who is autistic I met in Coastal Carolina, and we're still friends to this day. And I met him, and I was talking to him like outside the classroom, and we were talking about Spider-Man. And that's how we bond, by talking about Spider-Man.
Nice.
Funny how that goes.
It is. It's great, though. So, you've done a lot. Like, I met you in high school, probably your 10th or 11th grade year.
Yes.
And then, I didn't have any concept of what your future would be.
Mm-hmm.
It in my realm to know. I wasn't like an advisor to you or anything. Tell us a little bit about your journey, though. You left Myrtle Beach High School,
Yes.
and
I went to Warrior General Technical College to do my associates.
Warrior Georgetown Technical.
Yes. Then I went to Coastal Carolina to do my bachelor's in communication plus my minor in philosophy. And then finally, and this happened 2 years ago, I graduated with my master's in communication from Clemson. Again, go Tigers.
Nice, nice. So that's a lot of education.
Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a time when you didn't see that future?
I think it was most of the times it was more ambiguous than anything else.
Ambiguous. So was it like you just didn't know your future, but I mean, you really just went out there and hammered away at it. We would talk, you're at Warrior Georgetown Tech. Next time we talk, you're already at Coastal.
Yeah.
Next time we talk, you're headed to Clemson. And I just was like, man, Ed, there's just no end to the drive you have. What did you major in there? And just talk about some of your accomplishments at Clemson or at Coastal, whichever you find the most interesting. All of it's interesting to me.
I think it's interesting too, but I'm biased. And well, like I said, I did my master's of communication in Clemson, and that's pretty much where I find that most of the accomplishments that I cherish tend to happen during those years. Mostly, I can tell you one thing, I was voted to be the convention speaker for my cohort during graduation.
The commencement speaker.
Yes,
Very nice.
I was voted as one. I was voted to do so. I was also had the opportunity to speak in front of the Columbia State House about transportation needs for people with disabilities in South Carolina, mostly because I was working part-time in an organization called Able SC, which is based in both Greenville and Columbia SC. And I was chosen to just randomly, like I wasn't expecting, like, hey, we know you're a good public speaker, whatnot. Do you want to do this part of the segment in front of the Columbia State House and talk about transportation needs for people with disabilities? I was like, heck yeah, sure, I'll do it. And so that's accomplishment number 2. Accomplishment number 3 was at the time, I was a delegate in the graduate student government at Clemson, and I had the pleasure and opportunity to get my presidential citation for service and excellence, which is pretty much the highest honor you can get as a reward in the graduate student government.
Nice.
For my advocacy work in Clemson. And I wasn't expecting that because when I was because it was like a reward ceremony during that night, and I was told from email from a few people that I should go there, like some of the higher ups, like the ADA coordinator and stuff like that. They didn't tell me why. They just told me like you should go there because you know you're gonna have at least one reward for so and so. So I went there and I got one award. But then I remember something. I remember that this reward does not sound like the reward that they were describing. And then when we went to the next slide, they were describing a particular person. This person apparently, according to them, was a big advocate. And I was like, okay, sure, that doesn't really leave much room for interpretation, or there's not a lot I can say about me specifically. But then talk about he's also a disability advocate, talk about neurodiversity. And I was like, who else talks about neurodiversity in Clemson?
Gotcha.
And then I see my face.
It surprised you.
It surprised me very much because they were like describing this individual over time. And I was like, wait a minute, there's no other person in Clemson that is like this. Who is this? And it's like, holy crap, it's me.
Very good.
And also it wasn't just a reward I got like 2 Visa gift cards out of it.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't just like, oh yeah, just reward on the
piece of paper, yeah.
I got money out of it.
Got a little money.
Got a little money.
Nice.
Can't go wrong with that.
Well, that's incredible. Congratulations on those accolades. Incidentally, was Governor McMaster's at the State House when you did?
I don't think so. There were a few. There were a few representatives at the time there, but not the governor himself.
Gotcha.
It was during like Advocacy Day around, I would like to say April 2023. There were a few representatives that showed up and a lot of disability advocates and a lot of different organizations that focus on disability rights show up there as well. But Governor McMaster was not there.
Gotcha.
And before you ask, Nikki Haley was not there as well.
I wasn't going to ask about
yeah,
that.
and she wasn't there.
So, with your extensive experiences and higher education, what would you change about the world? Like, because it seems like you're an advocate for those with disabilities. What has the world got wrong? What does it need? What can we change?
I mean, there's a lot of things I want to change. I mean, I could be like somebody, I could give you like a stupid answer where it's like, I want to remove the idea of pineapple on pizza, but that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Because your dad owns a pizza place.
Yes.
And I like pineapple on pizza, so we got problems. What would you really change?
Yeah, remind me to break your bookshelf next. Anyway, jokes aside, I think for this question, I think I'm going to frame it a little bit where I want the world to not so much change, more like stop doing something. And that why I want them to stop is to stop looking at me as inspiration. I know that sounds weird, but let me cook for a second. So basically, a lot of times when I tell people about my work or my advocacy, or tell me that I tell them like I've done so and so, I've done this project, or whichever come first, they say like I'm inspiration, I'm this and this, and I'm like, I appreciate the intention behind it, but my issue always been like being put on the pedestal feels weird to me, and also inspiration does not fix discrimination. Because what I find for myself when people say you're inspiration, for me, it's like, okay, I'm an inspiration, but what are you gonna do about it? Because I can't change the world by myself. You have to do even like a small thing to do something as well. Because I can't just do all that myself. Because it could be something similar to say like, stop using the R word. It could be something simple as say, just look at disability in a different way. Or it could be like, say, just being understanding when someone asks for accommodations. Because for me, when someone calls me inspiration, it only makes them feel good. Like for me, I feel like it kind of reminds me like these type of weird Facebook memes where there's like a picture of like a disabled kid and they have like a prospect leg running, and there's a meme that says like, if he can do it, so can you. Like that type of inspiration. But my issue with all those is that they're there to make non-disabled people comfortable. Not so much for disabled people, because inspiration does not fix ableism in my mind.
Gotcha. Well, that's an interesting take, because in a sense you are an inspiration, but you're saying that being called an inspiration doesn't change anything, but it's kind of virtue signaling.
Yes.
So for me, I'm just like, you're an inspiration. I feel good about me now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's more of because the thing is, I understand good intention behind it. It doesn't come from a place of anger. It comes from a place of disappointment. Because the disappointment is a reminder that we still have a lot of work to do. Because if I'm inspiration, then what does that tell you about the systems that are already in place that's supposed to help disabled people, but don't?
Gotcha.
I mean, without going too political here, there's a lot of stuff going on in the United States. And the most easy one I can tell you is that in some states, they have this law, and South Carolina recently repealed it, where basically they have the right to pay disabled people sub-minimum wage.
And they repealed it, meaning they no longer have that right, or they do have that right still?
In South Carolina, it's basically illegal right now to pay a disabled employee some minimum wage. Like the federal minimum wage is $7.25, but there were some housing units where they only paid disabled people $1 per hour.
Wow.
Very, very gross and disgusting, really. And there's some states that still have that law in place in their books. And that's kind of like an example I'm using here because it's one where because me being called inspiration doesn't really
It doesn't cause change.
yeah. I think a good way to put it, and I'm gonna use MLK for this. If people there's this little book I love to read every once in a while, every year called The Letters from Birmingham Jail.
The Letters of Birmingham Jail. Okay.
Yeah, very good book. It's basically letters that Martin Luther King wrote in a jail cell when he was arrested for protesting, and he basically write letters in like a newspaper and to send to people, and it just went into one book. And there's this one thing that he really said, and it's been a while since I read it. It's been a while since I last read it. But the one thing he mentioned that really stuck out to me, and a lot of people need to remember, is that MLK realized that for a lot of people out there, like the white advocates, who are saying like we support you guys, but just stay on the side and not do anything. Like Martin Luther King was a pastor, and he knew a lot of white pastors who would say like we support you guys, but they were not vocal about it.
Or marching,
or that they were just there. And for him, and hopefully I'm not misquoting it, he felt that those type of people are the ones that hurt change the most because those people are not doing anything. Because at least with someone like a Ku Klux Klan member, they're honest about it. Like they're like where they stand.
and they're all in on that.
But for those, it's like
And that gets to the whole people standing idly by.
yeah, like not doing anything, like kind of like a whole virtuous thing. We're like, hey, we support you guys, but literally just stand nowhere, just sit there and call them an inspiration, and that's it. That's kind of how I view it. Where it's nice you call me inspiration, but what are you doing to change the world?
Well, obviously, changing the world is, like you said, there's no way for one person to change the world.
Yes,
But we can all sort of do our part, do our task, do our turn to do the work that can help move things forward. Tell us about what you're doing.
So basically, right now I am the proud owner, and I registered around a few weeks ago as the time of recording of a new company called Coastal Compass Coaching, and I'm the owner. Where basically my services involve in that. Man, words are tough, man. But anyway, my services involve providing tailored one-on-one coaching to young adults and teenagers with disabilities on their self-advocacy, career readiness, social skills, and independent living skills.
Excellent. And did you have someone help you with that? Or is that something you learned through your education that would be a valuable service to others?
Oh, there were a bunch of hands on this.
Yeah.
Like whether it be like from you and your ideas, whether it be like say my website designer, my father who's also a business owner. I had like a business mentor as well who told me like playing like a budget and whatnot. And probably a few other people as well. But the point I'm trying to get here, there were a bunch of different hands on it. And honestly, I don't believe in the idea of just doing everything by yourself. I believe like you should work smarter, not harder. And honestly, and this kind of go counter to the whole American rhetoric of like I forget. It's kind of hard to articulate, but this idea where it's like pulling your own horse straps, or like
picking yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, picking yourself by bootstraps, the American dream, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I like the idea of it, but at the same time, like you shouldn't work too hard to do everything by yourself when you can just have someone else who can be there to help you. Like you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, good point.
Mhm.
Good point. So this conversation is more about Eden and his dreams, really, than it is about neurodivergence. It's also about making a dream come true.
Mm-hmm.
Eden is starting his own company because the opportunities he's had to gain employment in the local and state area just simply hasn't been available.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about like some of the difficulties that you faced trying to use your highly educated degrees for a specific but niche area of disabilities, health advocacy. So those jobs exist on campuses and communities. Why has it been so difficult for you from your perspective?
I think, actually, no, it's not so much I think, I just know. I know that a lot of times for me, where doesn't matter if where it be like a government job, a university position, or say like a nonprofit position, I always get ghosted. Most of it, I'm not sure how much your viewers are familiar with the term ghosting, but pretty much it's like what happens where you tell some you send someone like a text or a message, but they never respond back. Like they read it, but they never respond back. So a lot of time it just felt like I was getting discriminated because wherever I do get interviews, I sometimes have to look away from the interviewers. I sometimes have to take a while to think about the question they ask and respond in turn. And as you know, a lot of interviews do emphasize like answering the question in a rapid pace, or say like looking at the interviewer at the eyes.
Yeah.
So for me, I always wonder like for all those times where I did these interviews, and even though I'm highly qualified, because heck, if I wasn't highly qualified, how did I got those interviews, right?
Right.
If I didn't have those. But it just felt like I was getting looked over, or it felt like kind of felt like no one, they didn't really give me a chance, or it felt like they were looking for a specific type of person, someone who is not so much the looking based on qualification, but more on as a personality fit,
Okay.
a cultural fit, as a word. Because a lot of people say like this is America, meritocracy, but I'm just gonna pour a little alcohol to the wound by saying like for me, America doesn't feel like meritocracy. It feels like knowing the right people opens a lot more doors than you think.
Yeah, and I believe that too. I think most of the folks out in the world will say, they've heard well, it's who you know, and that gets you in the door or gets you the job, and that kind of takes the fairness out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, though, let's just say you own a farm in Kansas.
Yes.
And you got all these guys that grew up on farms, and let's just say you decided to go to Clemson for agriculture.
Yes.
You've never had a farming job, and you get on the interview, and you don't seem like any of these guys in Kansas.
Yes.
So you almost overlook that. You go, well, I guess that makes sense. It's Kansas. All those guys are a bunch of bubbas who have been working on farms, and I'm sort of a more city guy. So maybe you can overlook that, but then you come across jobs where you feel as equally ready for the job as anybody else.
Yeah, and I always tell people like even if you meet at least only just 50% of the qualification, just apply. Because it doesn't hurt to like apply a position, or heck, even if you meet like 40% of the qualification, still apply, because there's no harm in doing that. But even then, it just felt like I don't know how to really articulate this. It's like I can't prove it to you in legal paper of me getting like discriminated against or me being looked over. What I can tell you, it just feels really odd for a position that involves specific areas I'm very qualified in, getting a bunch of these interviews, but either I get ghosted, and when I ask like an email for clarification why I haven't heard back, no response, or I just get like a one-word sentence that feels like an AI wrote it to be like, "Hi, you didn't got the position. Thank you."
Thanks for applying. Yeah, so and it's tricky. It's tricky because the whole you wonder if the neurotypical neurodiversity paradigm is at play there.
Yeah,
That a person on the other end of the line is looking for a person more like themselves,
yeah.
and when they come across someone, so I'll ask you this: have any of them asked you if you are neurodivergent or autistic or anything like that? And if they did, what would you say? And are you telling them that you're neurodivergent?
So far, from my memory in these interviews, I was never asked about my disability. The only time I was asked about my disability was during when I was applying to a position at Able SC when I was in Clemson. And they asked me, "Are you disabled?" And I would say, "Yeah," because I felt comfortable doing it because 50% of the people that work there are required to be disabled because every independent living center in the United States are required to have 50% of people who work there to be at least disabled. So it felt like, yeah, I feel comfortable telling because it's not like they're gonna
Right. They have a track record of hiring people.
hiring people with disabilities. So they're not gonna like discriminate against you because it'd be really weird for a disabled-led company to discriminate against you because you have a disability, right? So it makes sense that you disclose it. But for the other jobs I applied for during these past 2 years, they never asked me about my disability, or I didn't really felt the need to very clearly identify myself as much, whether that be, say, during the application process or during the interview process. Because for me, I find that disclosing a disability is a catch-22. Because, yeah, I can tell them, like, "Hey, just let you know, I'm autistic, so I'm going to need some time to answer your questions, like a few extra seconds or whatnot." But if I do that, once you tell people of your identity, you also incorporate bias into the equation. Because once they hear you're autistic, what could be like the first thing that comes to their mind? Like, "Oh, this person could be difficult to work with."
Or need massive accommodation, or who knows, right? Any
Yeah.
of these things.
Yeah, because it's kind of like how where many HR people or many recruiters or even like career advisors would tell you not to put your picture in your resume because if you put a picture of yourself in the resume, you're gonna encourage bias from whoever is the hiring manager. Because if they see like say like you're Asian, you're black, or you're wearing like a hijab or whatever, I mean what you can't control how they're gonna view you once they see a picture of yourself.
Right. Man, it is. That just speaks to how complex it is and how difficult it is for someone to be objective.
Yeah, it's because objectivity is a huge lie in my book because we're all biased. Because here's the basic truth about when coming to a job interview: the hiring manager have to at least like you if you want to get the job.
Right.
At least, no, not like as long as you're not a jerk with a hiring manager, you're already on a good foundation.
But if they like you,
Yeah,
like not just neutral, but positively,
yeah.
then you got a better chance.
You got a better chance. And it's not so much 100% guarantee you get the job, but clearly things become more weighted in your favor when they see when they really like you. Because you ever heard like the joke of like the personality hires, like the type of person who was hiring this company, even though they probably hire her or him for more of their personality than their qualifications. Like something you gotta wonder, like, dang, how did he got the job?
Yeah. So I want to ask this as sort of off the cuff. There's been a lot of talk about DEI. When I was a younger person, it was called affirmative action. And
Okay.
that it was this system that essentially, and I'm just going to generalize in the grossest sense of the measure, it essentially required all businesses and universities and things like that to have a quota of their people be diverse. Had to have this many black people or this many Native Americans or this many Hispanic people. And I'm sure it depended on the makeup of your community, but it required that.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of affirmative action ensured that a business would employ a diverse workforce, even if it didn't want to. So somewhere along the way, the word affirmative action kind of took a back seat,
Mm-hmm.
and best practices were still that diversity is better than lack of diversity. However, we're still not there. If you look at the boards of major Fortune 500 companies, there's less women at the top and less people of color at the top than there ought to be. However, DEI is this word that sort of popped up in the last 3 years. And I don't remember ever saying, walking into a business here in town and saying, wow, there is a lot of diversity and inclusion here. Because I don't think like that. I just see people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a hot button.
Yes.
And if you work hard to remove DEI, like inhibit a company or organization from having to maintain a diverse workforce, is that good or bad? I don't know. It's a new idea, because I feel like the idea of we don't need DEI is somehow lumped under this umbrella of we're a highly evolved society that will do the right thing, and we don't need to be told to do the right thing. Do you believe that people do the right thing?
In terms of
hiring practices?
If people do the right thing in terms of hiring practices?
In terms of maintaining a diversity in and of itself, because diversity is good. Do you think they need to be prodded to do better, or do you think left to their own auspices, they're going to do the right thing?
I don't really trust companies to do the right thing most of the time, because I'll give you like a little, and I'll give you some anecdotes to tell you what I mean. I was in like an HR conference, right? And one of the women who was like an HR leader was talking about this little story about Amazon using using AI to help streamline the hiring process, right? Like AI will scan through the resumes. They'll be like, okay, highlight this person. I don't know what the exact technical details of it. I'm just simplifying here for the viewers here. But it turns out this AI was very biased, because it kept on choosing and highlighting resumes that had white sounding guy names like John, Robert, Glenn, all
basic names,
basic white guy names in America. Like, think about your grandpa or whoever. It was highlighting those type of names. So the AI was looking over other resumes that had like non-white sounding name. Like, could be like, say, like my name, like Eden, or it could be like, say, it could be like a Asian name, a African name. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It was looking over all those and highlighting the one that had the most white sounding name, like Robert. And the reason I'm saying this, because AI is biased in the sense that the AI doesn't just work in a vacuum. It works because it gathers information from what it knows and put into the system. And the information that it puts in there is biased. Because
because it was put in there by a person.
Yeah, exactly. If something is created by a human, it will have bias put into it. So that's one anecdote. The other anecdote I will also say as well is that there was one time where I heard from one of my friends who used to be in like the higher community where they were interviewing this person for a job in university, very qualified. And this one person in the hiring community was like, don't like her. She stuttered too much.
She stutters.
Yeah, she stutters. So they look over her and hire the other person who was technically less qualified than her on paper because she was perceived as being a stutter. Even though it could be like she could be stuttering because she was nervous, or she could be stuttering because she has a disability. It didn't matter. So that's why I meant where it's like we need to do a better job in not only just having, because people talk about inclusive hiring practices, but not so much what does that mean or what does it look like. For me, it looks like flexibility, as in offering the opportunity for, say, like giving the interviewer the questions ahead of time so they have something to think about and look through. It could be like, say, providing a skill-based interview rather than like a personality, like, like how, like tell me about yourself type of interviews. Mm-hmm. Where it's more like testing the interviewee's skills, like being like, so how will you fix this problem we have here? So how will you mess around with this code?
Gotcha.
That type of thing. So those are some quick examples they give here, because the more flexibility we offer job candidates to really show who they are, the best chance we have in getting the best employees for our business. Because I'll tell you this, it's very pragmatically, it would be foolish not to at least have a wider net. Because when you have a wider net, you're more likely to catch a big fish.
Oh, nice.
When you think about it.
So when your workforce is more diverse, you have more perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for example, people with ADHD, and I'm not trying to stereotype here, they're known for spontaneity and they're hyper focused, and that's a very valuable skill. Like because some jobs require you to work long hours, and for someone with ADHD who may love the subject, they'd be like, I don't mind. I can work like freaking 7 hours straight on this problem, and that's it.
Right.
Like that's a highly valuable skill. But when you look at disability from a negative perspective, as I'm harking back from when I told you about perspective of disability, mm-hmm. Once you really think about disability from a negative perspective, that's when things become more. That's when you put like a wall, where you're not like, you know what, I don't really want to deal with this. They're probably going to be too difficult to work with, or something like that. But once you really change your perspective of disability from negative to something that just is, it helps you be like, him hyper-focusing means that he really cares about this subject. Because looking at disability just allows you to reframe stuff that's considered like a oddity to something more as something to be celebrated, or as a strength.
So what we really need are like more inspired and flexible CEOs, business owners, and HR departments that see the benefit of diversity, that want to celebrate the diversity of our larger community, that is mm-hmm. People in America, Americans. I always consider anybody here an American, even though others might not. But if you're here, we need you here. So, but if we had the inspiration at the top, mm-hmm. Then maybe it could filter into HR, and then HR could build that beautiful company from the bottom up. Mm-hmm. Well, so with your business, you're going to be helping a lot of young adults. How can we learn more about your business?
Sure. So right now, my website is currently under construction, and we're still in the process of trying to make like a landing page at minimum. But right now, you can contact me at my phone number and my business email at eden@coastalcompasscoaching.onmicrosoft.com. And my phone number is 843-501-2962.
Excellent. So people on Main Street, contact Eden, again at eden@coastalcompasscoaching, ed.onmicrosoft.com or call him at 843-501-2962, the number below, and find out more for yourself, because he's inspiring and he's more than capable.
Yeah. And also, feel free to leave a voice message if I don't get back to you. I usually respond within 24 hours.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Ed, thanks for visiting.
Mm-hmm.
You've changed.
A lot. The inside
Nice.
joke.
Inside joke. So, I'm T. Glenn with T-Bones Jones. Thanks for listening to our conversation today. And as always, be kind, one love.
And remember, it's free to be kind.
It is free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no money.